Okay, so I'm recording this kind of on a whim here. This is actually my son's case. We used an RPE to give him some expansion. It was a little narrow, and it actually came loose for a while. It's irritated his gums, honestly, unfortunately. But basically, we had some little bonded wings on the first primary molars, and then bands around the first permanent molars. And we got really good expansion initially, but since it was loose, I believe that led to a little bit of buccal tipping. I say that if it had just been attached to the molars, I wouldn't know where it resulted from. But when I checked it, when it first came loose, it was all looking pretty good. But over time, these started to flare out a little bit, and you can see that. So I don't really want that. I want those to be upright, but I do want the expansion maintained. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically tip these teeth in a little bit to get a new appliance made. That'll just be an upper LLA, lower lingual, or not LLA, sorry, TPA, transpalatal arch. So just a bar that comes right across the middle with a little loop, and then over there. So I'm going to send this to my lab as is, but I'm also going to send him one where these teeth are positioned where I want them, to see if he can make it bend it in such a way that so that I don't have to do it, so that it tries to bring these teeth into position. So, okay, so this is again on a whim here, so I'm just going to go ahead and get working, and hopefully this video is helpful. So first of all, I'm going to bring up the objects browser. I'm going to duplicate this because I want to have a backup of whatever I do. And I'll turn that off. Okay, so I already went ahead and trimmed it up, get it somewhat clean borders here. I guess technically I should fully clean the borders, do him a favor so he doesn't have to do that. And that way I have a fresh start and everything. So Control A to highlight everything, hit B, and smooth it. And then I guess I can go ahead and base it now. Well, no, I think here's what I'm going to do. First of all, I'm going to change into the orthographic view. It looks weird because everything looks really wide, but that's because there's no like perspective from the naked eye. But it's easier, I can see both sides. When I change this, these look like they're even more flared out because you have a singular perspective in the middle of the screen. And as you zoom farther and farther away, it gets a little bit better. But the closer you get, the more they stick out, just like if you were in real life. But from an engineering standpoint, or design, I don't want that. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to duplicate this just so I've got a copy. Turn this off and make sure I'm augmenting this one. Okay, so I'm going to trough out around these teeth so that he can place his bands, and he can do this himself, but I'm going to go ahead and just do it, something I started doing recently. Different ways to do this, but I'll show you. I've shown in another video recently how to do it, and I'm just going to do it right quick here. It's important to lift your mouse every once in a while, because if you screw something up, you can just go ahead and hit Control Z and you don't lose all of your progress. So we don't have to be perfect here, but we're just trying to get pretty close. Now getting in close in here is a little bit tricky. So we'll take our time. I don't care about the other teeth. I mean, I don't care if I accidentally select some of that. That doesn't matter. Or I say more than I am wanting to, it's not going to matter. I don't want to select this area, so I'm going to hold the Shift button and deselect that area. That's fine. Okay, not perfect, but it'll work. I'm going to hit B to smooth my boundaries so I get fairly smooth lines, hit accept. And now I'm just going to hit the T to transform button. Actually, I'm not going to do that. Control Z, I'm going to hit D to offset. And I'm going to go flat. Well, I'm going to go on the Y-axis, and I'm going to go flat. And let's see, let's go to 5 millimeters. That's more than necessary. 3 millimeters. That's fine. So basically, I mean, he's got enough room all the way around it where he can fit a band down there that should fit just fine. If he wants to smooth it, with a handpiece, whatever, that's great. But I probably don't even need to go that high, really. I'll drop it down even further to 2 millimeters. And there we go. The band should fit all the way around it. Now I'm going to go back to 3 just because this tooth is tilted in such a manner that I want to give him a little more room to grab on the buckle there. So, all right, hit accept there. And now I could have done this. I could have done both of these at the same time, but I didn't. So I'll go ahead and do this one now. All right, so this one should be even easier to select because I've got space between the 2 teeth. I'm gonna skip that area for now, keep my brush a little ways away, and then I'll just make my brush a little bit smaller to get even closer. The closer I get, the more intimate the band is gonna fit, and the less work he has to do to, grind it or whatever. The traditional method is just to grind a stone model or to grind a plastic, printed model, resin model. But if I can save him that work, saves him some time, and me being a little bit of a control freak that I am, makes me feel confident it's going to fit because I know that I'm doing it the way I want it. It's kind of like drawing your margins on a crown. No one should know where the margin is better than you should, in my opinion. I mean, I guess a really skilled lab should be really good at that. But anyway, hit B to smooth the boundary, hit accept, and now I'm going to hit D to let's change this to 3. Let's change this to Y. Let's change it to flat. Okay, same thing. Good enough. And it's really deep in the lingual, but whatever. He'll end up probably grinding some of this away a little bit so that he can get an arm in there, but doesn't really need to. It's up to him. Honestly, this is his expertise is going to be better than mine in this area. So hit accept, and so now we're good. We got 2 ditched out models. We're ready to go to the next step. So I'm going to duplicate this. Well, actually, no. Oh yeah, I'm going to duplicate because I always duplicate just as a backup. It's almost like hitting save, which I should also do. Get out of the steps when you try to duplicate. That's what I keep screwing up. All right, let's go ahead and save this. And pause for a second here. All right, so now I've saved it. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to base this first. Hit Control A, Control All. So everything's highlighted. I'm going to hit D to extrude, just like I did earlier. And my battery, my laptop is not plugged in, so it's going to run a little bit slow here. Let's change this to 12 just to see. I'm going to dial this density down because that's more like how dense are the triangles on the sides, and it doesn't really need to be that much. So y-axis, flat. And we need the palette, so I have a feeling that, yeah, well, did not crop off the palette, which is good. I'm going to go in X. Do I need to? I probably don't need to. I guess not. Okay, so I'll hit accept. Now the pink means it's inside out, and when I hit accept, not all of it will be, just this part will be selected. I need to select or highlight the entire area, including the extruded part. Well, it says it is, but I'm going to go ahead and hit Control A just to make sure. And I'm going to come to Edit, Flip Normals. And there we go. And I'm going to, I'm not even bothered plane cutting. All these parts sticking off here are like basically a 1 pixel thick. There's no actual tangible thickness to this, so it's irrelevant. A lot of times, just because I like things to look pretty, I'll plane cut it, but it's just not relevant here. I didn't hollow out the model. If my lab would like to hollow it, he's more than welcome to, but I'm just going to move forward. So now I am going to copy again. I'm going to duplicate it. Because one model's done. I could send this off to him and say, all right, go ahead and print this, make the appliance, and then I'll just bend the loop to cinch these teeth in. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to send him how I want it to be, so that he can either make it on an augmented model, or he can take this and make the appliance on the existing model and then bend it accordingly. So here's the trick though. I'm going to turn on this model. And I'm going to add some pivot points. And I've never done, I mean, I've added pivots plenty, but I've never done this exactly. So, just going to put that there. And then, can I do both of them or just, yeah, just one at a time. So, all right, I'll stick with this for now. Hit drop pivot. I'm going to turn on the pivots, make sure it's selected. And now I'm going to move this pivot up here a little ways. I'm estimating where the middle of the root is. Based on where this tooth is. If I look right down the middle of it, I would say it should be, I don't want this snapping to be on. Okay. If I look right down this way, I would say that's pretty accurate. Yeah, looks pretty good. So I'm going to say, all right, so that's that pivot. And you know what? I'm going to bring it a little bit closer. Because it should be, if this is where the bone is, the apex of the root should be here. So it should be somewhere in the middle of the bone. That's where teeth should pivot, is basically the center of resistance, which is resistance is bone. So from here to there, I'd say that's about how long the root is in this tooth. All right, so now I'm going to, first I'm going to save. And now I'm going to duplicate this pivot. And I'm going to transform it, world coordinates, over to this tooth. Just trying to save myself some work, honestly. Pretty well centered already. That's nice. And now I'm going to go to local coordinates, and I've got to do a little bit of work here because it's not going to be the same as the other tooth. There we go. Looks pretty good to me. This does not have to be perfect. I'm just estimating where this tooth needs to be. Yeah, leave it right there. Hit accept. Okay, so now I'm going to turn off this model, turn this one back on. If I edited this video, basically I did a bunch of work and found out it wasn't working the way I wanted to. But now I know exactly what I want to do. Unfortunately, I lost a bunch of my work, so I have to start over. So you're going to get an edited down version. So I am going to separate these teeth. I need to separate them out from the model, and you'll see why in just a second. So I'm going to double click here, and I'm going to double click here. Nah, I'm not going to do that. And I'm going to turn my select tool up really, really high, get really big, so it covers everything and beyond. You can actually just dial it to 100. Took my crease angle way up high, click here, and now I'm going to make it smaller so I can move around because the computer doesn't like that. Oh, my crease angle was a bit too high apparently. There we go. See if anything didn't get selected. I was having an area right in here that was. There we go, everything looks selected. I'm gonna go ahead and hit Y to separate that out. It's gonna create a new. So I'm just gonna call this tooth number 14. And I'm gonna hide that. I'm now going to select this part right in here. Put my crease angle back up a ways. And I'm just highlighting this little shelf in here. Okay, hit delete. That's fine. Now I'm going to come in here, double click. Once again, make it super duper large. Hover over top of this tooth. Now make it small again and look to see if I didn't get anything. I did notice last time when I was doing this that some little areas in here were too erratic that didn't get selected. So even though I'm not seeing any gray spots or green spots, I'm just going to go ahead and come around them so I don't introduce any little flaws that are not perceptible or are seemingly imperceptible. There we go. I just highlighted over top of it just to be safe. Hit Y to separate that tooth out. Call it 3. Hide the tooth. Select. And we're just selecting this area again. Take a look around, make sure nothing else is selected. Looks good. Delete. Okay, so now I'm going to hit Control A. There's lots of little straggler pieces in there. Don't like that. Hit I to invert. So now the pieces are disconnected should be selected. Click Delete. And all these little pieces should... Oh, Control A. That's not, I did the wrong thing. Control Shift G, that changes it all to one solid color. That's now a double click. It's going to highlight just the main body, and it's not connected will not select. Hit the I to invert what's been selected. So now what you can't tell is all those little stragglers are selected. Hit Delete, and away they go. So now there's no more little points floating around in these holes. Okay. So now what I need to do is I've got these holes, I've got these 2 teeth, and I want to straighten them out. Okay. Now before I was in the orthographic view, which is nice for an engineer standpoint, but if you're looking at more of a patient view, this makes a little more sense, where it's what we're used to looking at. So I'm going to click on this tooth and make sure my pivots are turned on. This one's selected. I'm going to hit the T button to transform. I'm going to click on this pivot, and now I can pivot it. Maybe it, yeah, I would say that's pretty good. We can show the opposing model, and you can see that it's still end to end. He's we expanded him quite a bit, but got a little bit flared in the molars. So this is still maintaining some expansion, just not quite the same flare. And I almost feel like I come in a little bit more, maybe. Let's turn on his original. Maybe just a touch more. Okay. And I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to turn off this original. T. Now select this pivot. Looking pretty good, I would say. Still, cost piece needs to come out a little bit more if we're going to upright that the lower molars. It looks pretty symmetric if you look at how much is shown there, how much is showing there. Looking pretty good. Gives us a little room to upright the molars and lower. This one's actually pretty upright. You can see from the occlusal plane. This one is tipped in a little bit. So yeah, I think this is pretty good. He's going to be in braces eventually, so we can expand him even more if we need to. But for now, I'm pretty confident. Let's hide this. Let's try analysis. I don't know if it'll allow me to. Intermolar width is at 38 millimeters. And that's pretty good for him. I know because this is my son, and I'm at like 36 millimeters, 34 millimeters. And I could use some more expansion, but I think we're going a little bit crazy if we try to go even more than 38. So I'm going to leave it. I'm going to say he looks good there. And now I'm going to, I can hide the pivots. I am going to merge all 3 of these, or combine all 3 of them. But what I now need to do is I need to come down here, come to the very end of this. This selection can be pretty small. Come all the way to the very edge, double click, double click. Now I'll go to, you can't really tell very well, but it's because it's blocking it, I'm sorry, but the very edge is highlighted on both items, objects. Go to edit and go to join and see what happens. There we go. It filled in that in, turned it in one solid piece. Okay, hit accept. I'm going to hit escape so I can unhighlight that. It's interesting why it's different, two different colors. I'm not exactly sure what happened there, but I don't really care either. Okay, so select, hit edit, join, or J. I couldn't remember if it was just J or not. All right, hit accept. And now we're done. I will note that there's a little part right here that's sticking through. It's not a big deal, but it might mess with printing a little bit. So I'm just gonna just smooth that back. There we go. So now, well done. This is the model my lab can make the appliance on, and then he can bend the wire to try to get it to where it needs to be, so that I can just sort of put it in, know that it will fit the other one, but he does the bending instead of me. All right, and that was a long video, sorry, but I'm gonna try to edit out about 2/3 of it where I was trying and failing, because there was probably a little too much of that. So, all right, thanks so much for watching.